So about a month ago, I made a video where I basically called out the people that were complaining about the fact that the Epic Game Store exists and saying that there was absolutely no good thing that could come out of another launcher coming out and trying to displace Steam. And I still stand behind a lot of the stuff I said in that video. I personally believe that Valve is getting pretty cocky and lazy, and first off, they don't make games anymore, so that's one thing, but their revenue share with developers is pretty crap. It's like 30% to start, and then it just goes up, it goes down from there depending on your prestige, or something along those lines. Definitely a far cry from the, 88 versus 12 on the Epic Game Store, which is, the store we're going to be talking about in this video. And in general, the customer service just isn't great, and it's not the best platform in the world. Or at least it's a far cry from being the best that it could possibly be. Despite that, the Epic Game Store, which, pretty much just made its big splash on the PC only like less than half a year ago, has not been welcomed by PC gamers. PC gamers don't like it. PC gamers are pretty angry about the fact that, it's kind of displacing Steam here. And frankly, it's understandable. I mean, stuff has developed since I made my last video on it. And my points still stand in that video. The people that are complaining just because it's a competitor to Steam, saying that Epic Games is a newbie on the market and, wouldn't know what they're doing, that all stands. But the Epic Store has problems, and unfortunately, because of those problems and the way that Epic Games went about, trying to make that splash on the marketplace to displace Steam, it's kind of too late at this point. The damage has already been done. PC gamers already hate the platform. Yeah, you have some people that are, apologists for it and damage controlling, or just bringing up points like I did that, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. And in my personal belief, like, for me personally, the damage isn't already done, and if they made improvements and stopped doing certain things, I could easily forgive them. But unfortunately, the PC gaming marketplace is full of people that put their feet down, know what they want, and if you don't give that to them, they will shun you. Which is great, because that means that the PC generally, like, BS doesn't get by on the PC without, getting properly criticized, unlike on consoles where people just buy up even the worst possible games and, services and experience regardless, just because more casuals are on the console, I guess, or at least with these major things, not counting like League of Legends or other stuff where there's both pros and tons of casuals. But what's really the shame about this whole situation with the Epic Game Store and how PC gamers are receiving it and responding to it is that it could have been avoided. This whole situation could have been avoided, and the Epic Game Store could have released on the PC, and people could have loved it, and it would have actually lit a fire under Valve's ass, which I still believe is necessary, because, there's some things that need to be fixed about Steam and Valve in general, but it could have released on the PC, made a big splash, and people would have welcomed it. And I'm going to go over in this video what they could have done, and how they could have avoided this whole mess of a situation and dug this grave that they probably are never going to get out of. So first things first, the Epic Game Store pretty much launched with almost no features. And they've added some features, since it, it became kind of quote-unquote big, but it's still missing a lot of things. Like, the Epic Game Store does not have cloud saves, it does not have user profiles, it doesn't allow user reviews, and the reviews that it does allow are developer opt-in, which basically makes these reviews useless. It doesn't have forums, it doesn't have a proper mod distribution service like a Steam Workshop, and yes, I'm just reading off that comparison chart, so you can easily find that, anywhere online. It does not have groups, like friend groups and stuff. No item trading within games. No library sorting. If you've ever seen my Steam library, you know that I like to organize it in all sorts of different categories. No family or account sharing or anything like that. No in-home streaming. No native broadcasting abilities. Not even a screenshot capture ability. No wish lists. No user-created guides. Like, none of this stuff is in there. And yes, again, I did just basically just read off of a list, so, feel free to, shun me for regurgitating some information I read online. But my point still stands. It didn't have any of these features at launch. And when it did add some features, for example, they just added the user reviews, it was basically half-baked. You can't just do developer opt-in, and I'm going to get to later as to why I think they did that, but you have to, like, if you're going to release a new platform and you want to displace another marketplace or another platform that you're trying to displace, you have to be at least comparable to them in terms of features, and the Epic Game Store definitely wasn't. So Epic Games should have released the store with at least a good chunk of these features. Cloud saves and achievements should have been there from day one without no question whatsoever. User reviews should have been across the board, mandatory, no developer can opt out on that. Categories, I think, should have been in there. Proper friend groups should have been in there. I understand stuff like forums, even though forums, by the way, are really easy to implement into a game launcher, but you know, even if some of the major stuff in there, like in-home streaming, wasn't there just yet, I don't think most people would care too much about something like that, or even native broadcasting, because people that are broadcasting are mostly going to be using OBS or something like that anyways, or Shadowplay or something along those lines. But still, those basics should have been there from the start, and honestly, it was a big mistake for Epic Games to release their launcher and not have that stuff from the get-go, especially if they're going to be wanting people to move over to their store and to their launcher. And one of the biggest, you know, defenses I hear about that is, well, Steam didn't launch with all those features, so why would we expect Epic Games Store to launch with those features? And my rebuttal to that is, you know, it's March 2019. I'm recording this video on March 2019. They could have easily seen what worked and what didn't work on Steam and added those features ahead of time. They had plenty of resources. Fortnite's made billions, or Epic Games has made billions off of Fortnite. They easily had the money and manpower to develop these features to put into their launcher before they launched their launcher. It doesn't seem like it's too unfair to suggest that that's how it should have been launched. And the second big problem that should have honestly never happened, that is one of the biggest reasons for the backlash and something that should not have happened to begin with, is the way that Epic Games has been trying to get people to go over to their store, to their launcher. What they've essentially been doing is they've been buying up timed exclusives and making it so that they're only releasing on the Epic Games Store for the first, like, 12 months of their release or so. And this isn't just regular old timed exclusives that, you know, haven't been announced for PC yet, then suddenly they're announced for PC and they're only going to be on the Epic Games Store for the first 12 months. These are games such as Metro Exodus and The Outer Worlds, I think is what it's called. They had Steam in their trailers. Essentially, at the end, it showed PS4, Xbox One, Steam. Those were in their original release trailers for months and months and months, and then at the last possible second, suddenly it's only on the Epic Games Store. People were putting in Steam pre-orders and getting Steam keys, and then suddenly that just is not a thing anymore because it's going over to the Epic Games Store. So not only are they doing the practice of timed exclusives, which gamers, especially PC gamers, really, really despise, but they were essentially cornering people at that last possible second who were expecting to get it on Steam so that they could take advantage of those features that I went over in the first part of this video. People wanted to, you know, have their forums, they wanted to have their achievements, they wanted to have their current Steam friends. Like, getting rid of that stuff and forcing people to use your platform by just buying up timed exclusives is just a recipe for disaster when it comes to PC gamers. Now, some of the heads at Epic Games said recently that they were going to decrease the amount of timed exclusives that they were going to do once people start using their launcher, and they said that they wanted to avoid poaching these exclusives in the last possible second like they did with Metro Exodus. But then, like a day later, it was revealed that The Outer Worlds, the situation happened with them too. So they're talking about how they want to avoid this backlash and how they don't want all that anger headed their way, and then they come and they do it again. So This got to stop. Epic Games has got to stop poaching these timed exclusives because, honestly, all you're doing is cornering people and forcing them to use your bare-bones, featureless platform to play your game, and that is going to piss PC gamers off a lot who like their comfort, who like to have their experience as freeform as possible with all the possible best features. Now, there's some other fluff that you could add to this list, such as those allegations that the Epic Games client was spying on your Steam data and sending stuff over to Epic. Now, I personally think that if this was discovered and the Epic Games Store wasn't already making all these other mistakes and getting hated by PC gamers, the people probably would have just let it slide. It would have been a headline for about a day or two, then it would have been forgotten. But because of these other things now, people want to cling to reasons to hate the Epic Games Store, and so when it was revealed that the Epic Games client was looking through your Steam data and sending it to Epic Games, you know, people were understandably pissed off. So that definitely could have been handled a little bit better too, maybe just to avoid any other potential backlash. Now, I'm no industry lead or anything like that. I've obviously never made a game launcher client myself, and I don't have any sort of big store. So obviously take what I'm saying with a grain of salt here, but I'm going to lay out a game plan that Epic Games honestly should have followed that I think would have led to a successful launcher that PC gamers would have embraced. So first things first, obviously the first thing you want to do to build up a small user base is have Fortnite on the PC only on your Epic Games launcher, because Fortnite's still a big game, even though Apex Legends is kind of going to dethrone it pretty soon. Having Fortnite on there is an exclusive. It's a game that Epic Games built up, and it's their game. They funded it, they developed it, so it should be on their launcher. Basically pull what EA and Ubisoft have been doing with Origin and Uplay. Start with that to build up a bit of a user base. After this, use that revenue split, that higher revenue split that the Epic Games Store has, to the advantage of the consumer and not just the publisher and the developer. So because Epic Games is only taking about a 12% split, or like 7% if you use Unreal Engine in your game, use that to sell games to PC gamers at a lower price. So instead of poaching a game from, for example, from being able to be released on Steam, instead buy out that first $10 of the price and make it so that if you buy it on the Epic Games Store, it's $50 versus $60 on Steam. Now, imagine that. That would definitely entice some people to come in pretty happily if they're already getting games for cheaper. And speaking of games for cheaper, what about free? The Epic Games client actually has this really awesome thing where every 2 weeks they give you a game for free, and these are pretty decent games. Like, the most recent one was just Slime Rancher, and then another one's coming out soon, and then I think The Witness is going to be the next one up. These aren't just dime a dozen crap games that they're giving up for free here. These are pretty decent. The game you're looking on the screen right now is Slime Rancher, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. So that definitely has to continue. Cheaper games from the revenue split. Maybe this doesn't have to continue forever. Maybe not at the $10 deficit, but $10 to start, and then when the client gets bigger and bigger and bigger, have it be $5, so $55 as opposed to $60. Remember, there's a lot of people who will buy Steam keys from CD keys or whatever for $47 to $50 when the game launches, or as opposed to the full $60, because that's what they want to do. PC gamers like bargains. So if you started off with free games being given out every 2 weeks like you're doing now, plus cheaper games, even if they're still available on other platforms, you would build up even more fan base, and people would start spreading positive word of mouth. They'd be saying oh, well, I can be on Steam, but, if you come over to the Epic Games Store, this game, Metro Exodus, is only $50. It's not $60 like it is on Steam. That's $10. That's 1/6 the cost of the game. So I bought it on there. You should totally buy it on there too. And on top of that, I get a free game every 2 weeks. So people would spread that word of mouth and they would say that stuff, and then you would start growing a user base of happy customers at that point. On top of that, before all of this even started, the launcher should have launched with achievements, cloud saves, and at least a more robust social feature such as profiles. That should have been there from the get-go, so that when people are using those other incentives I was just talking about to buy games on the Epic Games Store versus Steam, they don't buy a game and then suddenly regret it because they don't have achievements or they don't have cloud saves, so if their computer crashes, they lose everything. If people had those features to start with, and on top of that getting those cheaper games and the free games, people would be a lot happier. And then for the other stuff such as in-home streaming or forums and stuff, you could stick to that game plan that I know you guys released out to show how you were planning on developing the store. You could stick to that and, add those features over time. And then as the stuff goes in, headlines come out, oh, look at this launcher's getting these features, and people, again, would be happy. And a timed exclusive here or there is not a bad thing. The problem is the timing of said timed exclusive. Epic Games poached these timed exclusives before they even had any sort of customer base. So people started knowing about the Epic Games Store not because of enticing features or better prices or reasons to actually go to it. People heard about the Epic Games Store because they saw that, they wanted to buy Metro Exodus or something on Steam, and then suddenly realized that they have to go to this other client that they now have to download and make an account for, because it's a timed exclusive on that launcher for a year. But a timed exclusive here or there after you already build up a positive fan base, doing those positive things I was just talking about, wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing. Let's say, The Division 3. Let's say that's something that just comes out eventually. It's not ever announced to be on Steam, but then the trailers come out and shows PS4, Xbox One, Epic Games Store. If you're not poaching a bunch of other, timed exclusive games, I don't think people would be too mad about that. And that would help, again, build up a bit of a fan base and a user base at that point, because, it's whatever. I can get the game on here, but it's getting these other games for cheaper, and I've still got these basic features, so I'm happy, and I'm still getting my free games every 2 weeks or so. So ditch the large amounts of timed exclusives, and especially, for the love of God, they should have never poached anything, in the last possible second, so that people had to just suddenly download the Epic Games launcher, even though they were planning on getting it on another store with more features. And finally, the big thing is, after building up a user base doing these methods, start developing some more exclusive games. I mean, Epic Games, you guys make Unreal Engine, and the Unreal Tournament games, and you've shown with Fortnite, make fun of that game all you want, you've shown with Fortnite that you know how to make a game that entices people to come in, that draws people in. So imagine if they made like a new Unreal Tournament game that was only going to be released on their store, obviously because it's their game. That would, again, entice more people to come in and download the client. What you have to remember is Steam first started off as a means to easily download Valve games so that they could be updated, patches could come out, DLC could be released. And when Steam first released, people were pretty pissed off that they suddenly had to download this launcher to play like Half-Life 2 or something, rather than just putting the disc in their computer and playing it that way. But then people started to realize that with Steam, if you wanted to like move PCs and go to another machine, you just had to log into your account, hit download it, and then you're good to go. Meanwhile, with the old disc method, you had to find your old CD case, copy down the product key, put it in, then have your disc ready anytime you wanted to actually play the game, even though you already put the product key inside of it. When people realized that there was features that enticed them to use the store, people were more than happy to move over at that point. So that's why Steam has built up a positive reputation over the years, because rather than forcing people to use it, they, at least for other non-Valve games, of course, they made it easier, gave those other developers a platform to sell their games on, and they made it easier for people to manage their game libraries and keep stuff installed and updated. Now, unfortunately, in our current timeline, that is not what Epic Games did. They didn't do any of this stuff. And honestly, the reason that they didn't do it is because Epic Games was planning on using developer support to gain support for their store rather than fan support, which is a huge mistake. And this can be evidenced with the revenue share and the fact that they're not really passing these savings on to the consumer, the fact that they're just buying out timed exclusives to get these developers and publishers to put games on their store, and comments from Tim Sweeney where he outright said that developers and publishers are going to decide which launcher is successful, not the fans, which unfortunately just isn't the case. And now, unfortunately, that this damage was done, it's kind of beyond the point of no return at this point. No matter how much money you have, or how long you've been doing stuff in the gaming landscape, if you piss off PC gamers, and you keep pissing them off, you can't really go back. I mean, take a look at Games for Windows Live. Games for Windows Live was a crappy DRM. Like, basically, Microsoft was trying to bring Xbox Live to the PC, and PC gamers absolutely hated it, and it was shunned, no one liked using it, and even though a lot of developers stuck with it, eventually it just died out because Microsoft realized that there was no winning. Once you have a fundamentally, flawed ideal and platform, it's just not going to work out. So even Microsoft, who has been doing PC software and even video games for decades now, eventually they just pulled out of that. And they've been trying again recently with the Windows Store, and unfortunately, the Windows Store, much like the Epic Games Store, was released bare bones without features and as a clunky mess. But unlike the Epic Games Store, they're not poaching exclusives, they're just putting their own published games on there, the stuff that would normally be on Xbox, on Play Anywhere. And they're not forcing people to use their platform, so PC gamers didn't necessarily shun it and hate it, but they just didn't use it because it didn't offer anything better than what Steam offered. And now look what's happening. Microsoft, again, after trying again, is starting to allow their published games to go onto Steam. I mean, the Master Chief Collection was just announced for Steam, for Christ's sake, and I mean, that's something that ideally should have been on the Microsoft Windows Store if it was successful. You bet it would have been on there if it was successful, and it would have never seen the light of day on Steam. So that's it for now. If there's any new Epic Games Store news or anything like that that comes out, I'm obviously going to make another video about it, because this topic definitely fascinates me. Leave some comments down below. I really, really want to see what you guys think about the current situation with the Epic Games Store, what they could have done to improve their standing with PC gamers, because like I said, I am 100% for another launcher and platform coming onto the PC and dethroning Steam, or at least lighting a fire under Valve's ass a bit, because actual proper competition is good for everyone. All the features get better. I mean, just take a look at, like, the car industry. Nowadays, it used to be that if you wanted stuff like autopilot, active safety features, leather-cooled seats, Napa leather, this comfortable stuff, heads-up displays in your car, you had to get a high-end expensive luxury car. But then certain auto manufacturers started just adding those features to their regular cars, and then they started adding it as standard equipment. And now you go out and buy like a base level Toyota Corolla, which is like the cheapest car, one of the cheapest like economy cars you can get. You get all these active safety features from the get-go. That would have never happened if these car manufacturers weren't trying to one-up each other. Same thing could happen on here. If there was another platform that could really light a fire under Steam's ass, they could add more features, they could improve their customer service, and maybe they could develop games again. Valve could develop games again. Who really knows? So I am 100% for a store like the Epic Game Store coming up again and actually doing some good. And as I also said, if Epic Games stopped with the game poaching and added a bunch of these features, continued releasing free games, again, I would be okay with the client. The unfortunate thing, though, is that the majority of PC gamers still won't be, and it'll be a lot of effort now to gain their trust back. So let me know what you think. Leave those comments, and by the way, if you haven't already, I know I put up graphics in the middle of my videos all the time. Follow my Twitter. I am active on Twitter every single day. It is basically an extension of my YouTube channel. I do all the stuff I do on my YouTube channel on Twitter, so please follow me. I have like 5,300 subscribers on here, but only like 300 Twitter followers, so there's a lot of people that should be following me on there. Do so. We can interact more. I generally interact a lot more on there versus YouTube comments. But anyways, thanks for listening to my almost 22-minute long video, and enjoy the rest of your day.